I am Celeste, 32 years old, and the youngest daughter of Harold. 5 years ago, I sacrificed my marketing career to care for my aging father after Mom died. Today is his 70th birthday, and I spent weeks making it special. During the toast, my brother David stood up with a smirk. "Pack your bags, loser. This house is going up for sale." Everyone cheered while my heart shattered. Dad looked confused. I stepped outside and made one quick call. If you are watching this video, drop a comment telling me where you are from. Hit that like button and subscribe to join me through this wild family drama. Our family has always been complicated, but I never imagined it would come to this. My father, Harold, now 70, was always the backbone of our family. He worked as a civil engineer for 40 years building bridges and roads across 3 states. Mom was his high school sweetheart, the love of his life, and when she passed away from breast cancer 6 years ago, a part of him died with her. I was 27, then climbing the corporate ladder as a marketing manager for a tech firm in Chicago. My downtown apartment overlooked Lake Michigan, and my life was filled with client meetings, happy hours, and a promising relationship with a software developer named Ryan. Everything changed with one phone call from my brother Derek. "Dad is not doing well," he said. "He forgets to eat, barely leaves the house, and the place is a mess. Someone needs to check on him more often." Derek, my oldest sibling at 40, is the epitome of success on paper. As a chief financial officer for an investment firm, he lives in a mansion in the suburbs with his wife Stephanie and their 2 perfect children. He drives a luxury car, vacations in Europe twice a year, and never misses an opportunity to remind us of his accomplishments. But visiting Dad more than twice a year was apparently too much to ask. My sister Lauren, 38, lives in Colorado with her husband Justin and their 3 kids. She teaches at a private school and has always sided with David in family matters. Like him, she rarely comes home and calls Dad maybe once a month. Their excuse is always the same. They are busy with their own families, their own lives. I was the only one without those ties, so the responsibility fell to me. I took a leave of absence from my job, packed a suitcase, and moved back into my childhood bedroom. What was supposed to be a 3-month arrangement turned permanent when I realized Dad needed more than occasional help. His grief had aged him prematurely, and small signs of cognitive decline were appearing. Nothing major, just moments of confusion and forgetfulness that concerned me. So I resigned from my position, broke things off with Ryan, who was unwilling to relocate, and committed to caring for Dad. The family home, a spacious 4-bedroom colonial my mother had inherited from her parents, became mine to manage. Every corner held memories. The kitchen where Mom taught me to bake, the backyard where Dad built us a treehouse, the living room where we gathered for holiday celebrations. 2 years ago, Dad met Patricia at his doctor appointment. She was a nurse at the local clinic, 50 years old, divorced with no children. Their relationship progressed quickly, and to everyone's surprise, they married after just 6 months of dating. I was cautiously optimistic, hoping she would bring joy back into his life. At first, Patricia seemed perfect. She cooked for Dad, accompanied him to appointments, and encouraged him to join a senior community center. But something about her always felt off to me. The way she would glance at the family photos with disinterest, how she would casually mention the value of the house, her subtle comments about my temporary situation as a caretaker. David and Lauren welcomed her with open arms, perhaps seeing an opportunity to absolve themselves of guilt. "See, Dad is fine now. He has Patricia. You can go back to your life," David told me during one of his rare visits. But I could not leave. Dad still had good days and bad days. His arthritis made it difficult to navigate the stairs sometimes. His high blood pressure required regular monitoring, and occasional moments of confusion still happened, especially when he was tired. Meanwhile, my relationships with David and Lauren grew increasingly strained. They criticized my caregiving decisions from afar, questioning the medications Dad was taking, the doctors he was seeing, even the food I prepared. Yet their own contributions remained limited to short visits and occasional phone calls. "You are wasting your potential," David would say. Lauren would add, "It's not healthy to put your life on hold like this. Dad wouldn't want that." But they never offered real solutions, never volunteered to take Dad for extended periods, never suggested family counseling or shared caregiving arrangements. It was easier to criticize than to help. Uncle Walter, Dad's younger brother, was my only ally. Living 3 hours away in Cleveland, he visited whenever he could and always made time to call Dad twice a week. Walter understood my choice and defended it to David and Lauren. "Your sister has made a sacrifice you two were unwilling to make," he once said during a heated family discussion. "Instead of judging her, you should be thanking her." That comment did not go over well, widening the rift between us. After that, family gatherings became even more tense, with undercurrents of resentment flowing beneath forced pleasantries. As for Patricia, her attitude toward me gradually changed once the honeymoon phase with Dad ended. She began questioning my presence in the house, suggesting I was interfering with their marriage. She would make comments when Dad could not hear, like, "It must be sad to be your age with no career, no relationship, and living with your father." Or, "Harold and I would have more privacy if you found your own place." I tried to maintain a peaceful relationship for Dad's sake, but it became increasingly difficult as I noticed her behavior changing when we were alone versus when others were present. Around David and Lauren, she was the devoted wife, the caring nurse. Around me, the mask occasionally slipped. Still, I stayed. This house was not just a building to me. It was Mom's legacy, the physical embodiment of our family history. And despite everything, I believe Dad needed me. In his moments of clarity, when he would squeeze my hand and say, "I don't know what I would do without you, Celeste," it made all the sacrifices worthwhile. Little did I know that beneath the surface, forces were aligning against me, plotting to take away not just my home, but my father's security and happiness as well. I spent 2 full weeks preparing for Dad's 70th birthday celebration. This milestone deserved something special, something that would bring light to his eyes and remind him of happier times. I wanted everything to be perfect. The menu was planned with meticulous care. Dad's favorite meal had always been beef Wellington, a dish Mom would make for special occasions. I practiced 3 times before the party, struggling to get the pastry just right. The apple pie was another challenge, made from Mom's handwritten recipe card that was faded from years of use. "The secret is in the crust," she always said, and I was determined to honor her memory by getting it exactly right. Decorations were another labor of love. I dug through the attic and found boxes of old photographs, selecting the best ones from different periods of Dad's life. His college graduation, wedding day with Mom, the birth of each of his children, family vacations, retirement party. I arranged them chronologically in a beautiful leather album, adding captions and dates beneath each photo. For the party itself, I created a photo wall in the living room, tracing 70 years of a life well lived. Blue and white balloons, Dad's favorite colors, were arranged throughout the house. The dining table was set with Mom's best china, only used for the most special occasions. I even tracked down a bottle of the champagne they had served at their wedding, planning to present it as a surprise during the toast. Inviting David and Lauren was the most challenging part of the preparations. My relationship with both had deteriorated further in recent months, with David barely returning my calls, and Lauren communicating mostly through terse text messages. Still, I reached out, emphasizing the importance of the day to Dad. "It's his 70th birthday," I said to Davy over the phone. "It would mean the world to him if you all came." "We'll see if we can fit it into our schedule," he replied, his tone suggesting it was a major inconvenience. "By the way, has Dad updated his will since marrying Patricia? We should discuss inheritance matters soon." The conversation with Lauren went similarly, her primary concern being whether David would be attending and if there would be family discussions about the house and Dad's assets. Their reactions left me unsettled, but I pushed those feelings aside. This day was about Dad, not about family tensions or inheritance questions. Patricia's behavior in the lead-up to the party was equally concerning. She insisted on inviting several of her own friends whom Dad barely knew, including someone she vaguely described as a business associate. When I suggested keeping the gathering intimate with just family and Dad's closest friends, she accused me of trying to control everything. "This is my house too now," she reminded me, "and Harold is my husband. I have a say in who celebrates with us." There was also the matter of her increasingly frequent private meetings with Derek. Twice in the month before the birthday, David visited while Dad was at his physical therapy sessions. He and Patricia would sit at the kitchen table, speaking in hushed tones, spreading out papers that were quickly gathered when I entered the room. "Just discussing some health insurance options for your father," Patricia explained, with a tight smile when I questioned her. "David has connections in the industry. but I glimpsed what looked like real estate brochures and property valuation forms before they were shuffled away. Something was happening behind my back, but without concrete evidence, I could only maintain vigilance. I confided my concerns to Uncle Walter during one of our private calls. Walter had been diagnosed with prostate cancer earlier in the year and was undergoing treatment, making it unlikely he could attend the birthday party. This saddened both Dad and me, as Walter was always the life of family gatherings, telling jokes and diffusing tensions with his easygoing nature. "Keep your eyes open, Celeste," Walter advised when I told him about the secret meetings. "I don't trust Patricia, and David has always been too focused on money. Remember what your mother always said about the house?" Mom had been explicit that the family home should remain in the family, preferably with whoever was caring for Dad in his later years. It was her inheritance, and she wanted it to continue sheltering those she loved. This wish had been documented in her will, with Dad receiving a life estate and the property eventually passing to her children. "I've been thinking about taking some precautions," I admitted to Walter. "Legal ones." "That's wise," he agreed. "Let me make some calls. I still have contacts from my days in real estate law." Walter's support gave me strength, but I still found myself lying awake at night, worrying about what might be brewing. The week before the party, I noticed Patricia going through Dad's medication, seemingly adjusting dosages when she thought no one was watching. Dad had been more confused lately, more easily tired. When I suggested taking him for a checkup, Patricia insisted it was unnecessary. "He's just getting older, Celeste. Stop being paranoid." I also discovered that Patricia had been showing the house to strangers while Dad and I were out. Neighbors reported people walking the property and taking measurements. When confronted, she claimed they were friends considering renovations to their own homes and wanted to see our layout for ideas. Despite these unsettling developments, I remained determined to make Dad's birthday special. The day before the party, I finalized the surprise gift I had been planning for months: 2 tickets to Lake Tahoe, where my parents had gotten engaged 45 years ago. Dad often spoke wistfully of that trip, of the sunrise over the water when he proposed to Mom. I wanted to give him a chance to revisit those memories with me, accompanying him to ensure his comfort and safety. As I wrapped the tickets in silver paper, I couldn't shake the feeling that tomorrow would bring more than just a celebration. Something was shifting in our family dynamic, and I needed to be prepared for whatever might come. The morning of the party arrived with golden autumn sunshine streaming through the windows. I woke early to finish the last preparations, arranging fresh flowers on the tables and putting the final touches on the birthday cake. Dad came downstairs around 9, dressed in the new blue shirt I had bought him for the occasion. "You look handsome, Dad," I said, adjusting his collar. "How did you sleep?" "Like a log," he replied, with a smile that momentarily erased the tired lines from his face. "Patricia gave me something to help me rest. Said I needed to be fresh for today." That comment triggered a flicker of concern, but I pushed it aside. Today was about celebration, not suspicion. Patricia emerged shortly after, dressed in an expensive-looking red dress I had never seen before. She fussed over Dad, straightening his shirt, combing his hair, behaving like the devoted wife for all to see. Yet there was something calculating in her eyes, a barely contained excitement that seemed out of proportion for a simple family gathering. "I've invited a few extra guests," she announced as I was setting the table. "Hope that's not a problem." Before I could respond, the doorbell rang. David and Stephanie arrived first, their children conspicuously absent, despite my specific invitation including them. Dad adored his grandchildren and rarely got to see them. "The kids had other commitments," David explained dismissively when Dad asked about them. He carried a small gift bag that looked hastily assembled, the tissue paper sticking out haphazardly. Lauren and Justin arrived next, also without their children. Lauren gave Dad a quick hug before immediately gravitating toward Derek. The two of them moved to a corner of the living room for a whispered conversation. Dad's oldest friends, George and Martha from down the street, arrived bearing homemade bread and warm smiles. They had known our family for decades, had watched us kids grow up, and genuinely cared for Dad. Their presence was a comfort amid the strange undercurrents I was sensing. The most concerning arrival was a sharp-dressed man in his 50s, whom Patricia introduced simply as Frank, a dear friend. He carried a briefcase and had the polished look of a businessman. When I asked how he knew Patricia, his answer was vague, through mutual connections in the real estate world. The party progressed with surface-level pleasantries. We shared a meal at the dining table, Dad at the head where he had always sat. He seemed in good spirits. though occasionally confused about details or conversations. Twice he called Martha by my mother's name, something that had never happened before. After the main course and before dessert, I brought out the photo album I had created. Dad's eyes lit up as he turned the pages, memories flooding back. "Look at us in Yellowstone," he exclaimed, pointing to a faded photograph from 30 years ago. "Barbara was so afraid of the bears. Remember that, kids?" David and Lauren barely glanced at the album, exchanging looks I couldn't interpret. Patricia kept checking her watch as if waiting for something. When it came time for cake, I brought out the 3-tiered creation decorated with fishing motifs, Dad's favorite hobby from his younger days. The candles were lit, the song was sung, and for a moment everything felt normal, even happy. Then David stood up, tapping his glass with a spoon. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to him. "I'd like to make a toast to the man of the hour," he began, his voice carrying an undercurrent of triumph. "Dad, you have given us so much over the years, your wisdom, your support, your love. Today we want to give something back to you, a new beginning." He paused for effect, his eyes meeting mine briefly with a cold satisfaction. "As many of you know, this house has become too much for Dad to manage. The stairs, the maintenance, the property taxes. Patricia has been concerned about his well-being here, and after careful consideration, we have made an important decision." My stomach tightened as David reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded document. "Dad has signed over power of attorney to me, and we have decided it's time to sell this house and move him to Oakwood Terraces, a premium senior living facility with full-time medical care. So, Celeste," he turned to me, his smile not reaching his eyes, "pack your bags, loser. This house is going up for sale." The room erupted in applause, glasses raising in celebration. Patricia was beaming, clinging to Dad's arm possessively. Lauren nodded in approval. Frank, the so-called friend, opened his briefcase, revealing stacks of real estate documents. I looked at Dad, expecting protest, confusion, anger. Instead, I saw only bewilderment in his eyes, as if he couldn't quite grasp what was happening. "But what about our trip to Lake Tahoe?" he asked, his voice small and confused. "Celeste said we were going to see the sunrise." David laughed dismissively. "Dad, you're in no condition for travel. Celeste has been filling your head with impractical ideas. Oakwood Terraces has beautiful views too, and round-the-clock care." Patricia chimed in, her voice syrupy sweet. "We're doing this for you, darling. Celeste can visit you any time at Oakwood. It's really for the best." The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. They had planned this ambush on his birthday of all days, used the celebration as cover for their scheme, and everyone was acting as if this was something to celebrate, as if tearing Dad away from his home was a gift, rather than a cruel theft. George and Martha looked uncomfortable, exchanging concerned glances. They knew how much this house meant to Dad, how it connected him to Mom, to a lifetime of memories. "The market is hot right now," Frank was saying, spreading papers across the table where the cake still sat half-eaten. "We could list by next week and probably have offers within days. This neighborhood has appreciated significantly." I couldn't bear another second. My chest felt tight, my vision blurring with unshed tears. Without a word, I stood up and walked out the front door into the cool autumn air. With shaking hands, I pulled out my phone and made the call I had been hoping would not be necessary. "Michael, it's happening just like we feared. I need you here now." Michael had been my closest friend since college. We met in business ethics class, ironically enough, and stayed in touch even when our careers took different paths. While I went into marketing, he pursued law, specializing in elder care and estate planning. When I first noticed Patricia's suspicious behavior months ago, Michael was the first person I called for advice. "They can't just sell the house from under you," he reassured me now, his voice calm and steady through the phone. "Not if we've done our homework correctly. I'll be there in 10 minutes. Walter is already on his way with Dr. Kapoor." I leaned against the porch railing, trying to steady my breathing. This moment, as terrible as it was, didn't come as a complete surprise. In fact, I had been preparing for it for nearly 6 months. It started with small things. Patricia misplacing Dad's glasses right before important appointments. Scheduled maintenance workers showing up when neither Dad nor I had called them. Dad becoming unusually drowsy after Patricia made him special tea in the evenings. His increasing confusion about basic facts, which would mysteriously improve when Patricia was away, visiting her sister for a weekend. One night, I came downstairs for water and found Patricia in the kitchen transferring pills from one bottle to another. When she saw me, she quickly put everything away, claiming she was just organizing Dad's medications. But the next day, I checked his pill organizer and found different tablets than what his doctor had prescribed. I took one to a pharmacist friend, who identified it as a strong sedative, not on any of Dad's prescription lists. That was when my suspicions solidified into certainty. Patricia was drugging my father, likely to make him more compliant and confused, easier to manipulate. Around the same time, I noticed David making more frequent appearances, always when Dad was out of the house or napping. He and Patricia would huddle together over documents, speaking in hushed tones. Once I overheard fragments: power of attorney, property valuation, split the difference. Most disturbing was finding an old text message thread on Dad's phone when I was helping him with an app. Messages between Patricia and David dating back 3 years, long before she ever met Dad at the clinic. In one exchange, David wrote, "Found a perfect mark. Widower, valuable property. Daughter living with him might be an issue. Will keep you posted?" Patricia had replied, "Daughter can be managed. Get me an introduction and I'll handle the rest." They had targeted Dad deliberately. Patricia was never a random encounter at the clinic. She was planted there by Derek, part of a calculated plan to gain control of the house. When I showed these messages to Dad during a moment of clarity, he was devastated but also doubtful. "Patricia loves me," he insisted. "David is my son. They wouldn't do this." His denial was heartbreaking, but understandable. No one wants to believe their loved ones could betray them so fundamentally. And by then, Patricia's medication tampering had progressed to the point where Dad had more confused days than clear ones. That was when I reached out to Walter for help. Despite his cancer treatments, he immediately stepped up, connecting me with his former legal colleagues and helping formulate a protection plan. "Your mother would never forgive me if I let them take that house from Harold," Walter had said, "or if I let them push you out after all you've sacrificed." Working quietly, we arranged for Dad to undergo a cognitive assessment during one of his clearer periods with Dr. Kapoor, a geriatric specialist not connected to Patricia's network. The results showed that while Dad had mild cognitive impairment, he was still legally competent when not under the influence of unauthorized medications. With this documentation in hand, we worked with Michael to create a set of legal protections. Dad signed a healthcare proxy naming Walter and me as his decision makers. He created a new power of attorney, limited to specific actions and requiring dual signatures from both Walter and myself. And most importantly, he signed a declaration stating his explicit wish to remain in the family home with appropriate in-home care as needed. All these documents were properly witnessed and notarized during a day when Patricia was attending a nursing conference that I later discovered never existed. We kept the originals in Michael's office safe, giving Dad copies to hide in his fishing tackle box, a place Patricia never touched. We also installed small cameras in the common areas of the house, legally recording Patricia's activities. The footage captured her tampering with medications, going through Dad's personal papers, and once slapping him when he questioned where some of his savings had gone. I had been gathering this evidence methodically, planning to confront Patricia with Walter's support once his treatments were complete. But David had accelerated the timeline with this birthday ambush, forcing my hand. As I ended the call with Michael, I took a deep breath and prepared to return to the party. Through the window, I could see David distributing papers to sign. Patricia was gesturing excitedly about something, probably the penthouse apartment she had been not so subtly researching online. Dad sat slumped in his chair, looking every one of his 70 years, and then some, confusion evident in his posture. My anger burned cold and clear. This was not just about the house, though that mattered. This was about Dad's dignity, his right to make informed choices about his own life. It was about honoring Mom's wishes for the family home. And yes, it was about justice, about not letting manipulative people profit from elder abuse. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway signaled Michael's arrival. Moments later, another vehicle followed, Uncle Walter emerging with Dr. Kapoor. Despite his obvious fatigue from cancer treatments, Walter's face was set with determination. Dr. Kapoor carried his medical bag, his expression professionally neutral. "Ready?" Walter asked, putting a supportive hand on my shoulder. I nodded, straightening my spine. "More than ready. Let's end this." Together we walked back into the house, ready to expose the truth and reclaim what was being stolen right before our eyes. The conversation in the living room halted abruptly as we entered. David was mid-sentence, pen in hand, apparently explaining something about escrow accounts. Frank, the real estate agent, was arranging glossy brochures on the coffee table. Patricia stood behind Dad's chair, her hands possessively on his shoulders. Celeste, David said with exaggerated patience, we're in the middle of something important here. Perhaps you could get us some coffee while the adults handle the paperwork. The paperwork stops now, I replied, my voice steadier than I expected. Dad is not selling this house, and he's not moving to any facility. David laughed, a dismissive sound that made my skin crawl. Too late, little sister. The papers are already signed. Power of attorney gives me the right to make these decisions for Dad's benefit. I'd like everyone to listen carefully, I said, addressing the entire room. What is happening here is not just morally wrong, it's illegal. Lauren frowned, looking between David and me. What are you talking about? David has power of attorney. Everything is above board. Is it? I challenged. Did anyone wonder why Dad suddenly needed someone to make his decisions for him? Did anyone question the convenient timing of his cognitive decline after Patricia entered his life? Patricia gasped dramatically. How dare you? I have done nothing but care for Harold. Tell her, darling. She nudged Dad, who looked confused and uncomfortable. Patricia has been systematically medicating Dad without his knowledge or consent, I continued, giving him sedatives and antipsychotics not prescribed by his doctor, causing artificial symptoms of dementia. That is ridiculous, David scoffed. You're just upset because you'll need to find your own place to live. Time to grow up, Celeste. Michael stepped forward, introducing himself as my attorney. Actually, we have evidence of medication tampering, including video recordings and pharmacy records. Mrs. Walker has been substituting Harold's prescribed medications with unprescribed sedatives for at least 4 months. Patricia's face paled slightly, but she maintained her indignant expression. These are outrageous accusations, Harold. Tell them how well I take care of you. Dad looked uncertain, his gaze moving between Patricia and me. Because you've been drugged, Dad, I said gently. Remember how clear-headed you felt last month when Patricia visited her sister? That was because you were actually taking your proper medications. Lauren was now looking increasingly uncomfortable. Derek, is any of this true? Did you know about medication issues? Before David could answer, Walter spoke up. There's more. Patricia and David have known each other for years. They planned this whole scenario, targeting Harold specifically for his property. That's absurd, David sputtered. Patricia and Dad met at his doctor appointment. It was completely random. I pulled out my phone and displayed the text messages I had recovered. Is this random? Messages between you two from 3 years ago, discussing finding a mark with valuable property, discussing how to handle me because I might be an issue, planning how to get control of the house? Lauren gasped, grabbing the phone to read the messages herself. Oh my God, Derek, tell me this isn't real. Derek's face flushed with anger. Those messages could mean anything. You're twisting things. Dr. Kapoor stepped forward then, addressing Dad directly. Mr. Walker, I'm Dr. Kapoor. We met last month for a cognitive assessment. With your permission, I would like to take a blood sample today to test for unprescribed medications. Dad nodded slowly, beginning to understand the gravity of the situation. Yes, please do that. Patricia immediately objected. This is unnecessary and invasive. As his wife, I do not consent to random blood tests. Fortunately, Patricia, your consent is not required, Michael interjected. Harold has a healthcare proxy giving decision-making authority to Walter and Celeste. This document was executed when Harold was demonstrably competent, witnessed, and notarized according to state law. He produced the document, passing copies to David and Lauren. As you can see, this supersedes any power of attorney David claims to have, especially for healthcare decisions. Frank, the real estate agent, was looking increasingly uncomfortable. I was told this was a straightforward family decision with all parties in agreement. If there are legal complications, I cannot proceed with any property listing. He began gathering his materials, clearly wanting no part of the unfolding drama. David slammed his fist on the table. This is ridiculous. Dad signed power of attorney to me 3 weeks ago. That's the most recent document, so it takes precedence. Actually, Michael countered, a power of attorney signed while the principal is under the influence of mind-altering substances not prescribed by a physician is invalid on its face. Furthermore, the document Harold signed with Celeste and Walter explicitly revokes all previous powers of attorney and remains in effect unless revoked in writing with the same witnessing requirements. Lauren had moved away from Derek, her expression a mixture of shock and disgust. I can't believe this. You told me Dad was declining naturally, that the move was his idea once you explained the benefits. Your brother has been systematically lying to you, Walter said, his voice gentle but firm. Harold never wanted to leave this house. It was Barbara's family home, and her explicit wish was for it to remain in the family, specifically with whoever was caring for Harold in his later years. Dr. Kapoor had finished drawing Dad's blood and was labeling the vials. I'll have rush results on this within 24 hours. Based on my previous examination and what I'm observing today, I have serious concerns about medication mismanagement. Dad was watching the proceedings with increasing awareness, as if fog was lifting from his mind. I remember signing papers for Derek, he said slowly, but I was very confused that day. Patricia had made me special tea, said it would help me sleep better. Patricia was now visibly nervous, her confident facade crumbling. Harold, darling, you're confused again. Remember what the doctor said about your memory problems? Which doctor? I asked pointedly. Because Dr. Kapoor found Dad to be cognitively intact when properly medicated. The only doctor claiming severe decline is Dr. Reynolds, who, coincidentally, is your former colleague and whose prescriptions you've been altering. Dad turned to Patricia, hurt and betrayal dawning in his eyes. Have you been drugging me, Patricia? Making me forget things? Making me confused? She didn't answer directly, instead turning to David with a panicked expression. Do something! They're twisting everything. Michael addressed the room again. The power of Attorney David is relying on contains a signature that forensic analysis will likely show was executed while Harold was in an impaired state. We have video evidence of Patricia administering unprescribed medication approximately 2 hours before the document was signed. You've been spying on us? Patricia shrieked. Installing security cameras in common areas of one's own home is perfectly legal, Michael replied calmly, especially when there is reasonable suspicion of elder abuse, which this clearly constitutes. George and Martha, Dad's old friends who had been watching in stunned silence, finally spoke up. Harold hasn't been himself for months, Martha said. We noticed, but assumed it was just age. To think someone was deliberately causing it. Dad's expression had transformed from confusion to anger. For the first time in months, I saw the strong, decisive man I remembered. I want to see these videos. I want to know exactly what's been happening in my own home. Patricia's composure finally shattered. This is all Celeste's fault, she screamed, pointing an accusing finger at me. She's been jealous of me from day one, trying to keep Harold dependent on her, isolated from everyone else. She's the one manipulating him, not me. David stepped in, his attorney mask firmly in place. These are serious allegations being thrown around carelessly. If you continue with these defamatory statements, we will have no choice but to pursue legal action. Michael remained unruffled. By all means, let's take this to court. I'm certain a judge would be very interested in reviewing the evidence, including the financial transactions showing $40,000 transferred from Harold's accounts to yours over the past year, Derek. Lauren gasped. $40,000? Dad, did you authorize that? Dad shook his head slowly. I don't remember any large transfers. Patricia handles the online banking now. Because she deliberately made it seem complicated, Walter added, the same way she made you think you were losing your memory and your cognitive abilities. Lauren turned to Derek, her expression hardening. You told me Dad needed memory care because he was forgetting to pay bills, losing track of money. Was that a lie too? Derek's face flushed. The money was for financial management services, completely legitimate. Through your own company, Michael noted, at rates 4 times the industry standard. Another fact that would interest Adult Protective Services and possibly the district attorney. Frank, the real estate agent, had edged toward the door. I think I should excuse myself from this situation. Clearly, there are family matters to resolve before any property decisions can be made. Wise choice, Walter told him, and I suggest you carefully vet your future clients to avoid involvement in elder abuse schemes. Frank nodded uncomfortably and made a hasty exit, leaving his brochures scattered on the coffee table. Patricia suddenly changed tactics, her expression morphing into one of wounded innocence as she addressed Dad directly. Harold, darling, they're trying to come between us. You know I love you. Everything I've done has been for your own good. Dad had been growing increasingly alert throughout the confrontation. He looked at Patricia with clear eyes, perhaps truly seeing her for the first time in months. If you loved me, you wouldn't have drugged me. You wouldn't have conspired with my son to take my home. You would have respected my wishes. Patricia's mask slipped completely. Your wishes? What about my wishes? I didn't sign up to be stuck in this outdated house in this boring neighborhood. David promised me a share of the sale, enough for the penthouse downtown I deserve. The room fell silent at this admission. Even David looked stunned at her outburst. I think you should leave, Patricia, Dad said quietly but firmly. Now. You can't throw me out. I'm your wife. This is my house, too. Walter stepped forward. Actually, the prenuptial agreement you signed specifically excluded any claim to this property, and given the circumstances, I believe we have grounds for an expedited annulment based on fraud. Patricia turned to David in panic. You said the prenup was just a formality, that once we sold the house, no one could stop us. David backed away from her. I never said that. You're making things up now. Lauren had moved to Dad's side, her arm protectively around his shoulders. I can't believe I fell for all this. David told me you were declining rapidly, that you needed professional care. I should have come to see for myself instead of taking his word. Dad patted her hand. You were busy with your own family, and David has always been persuasive. Patricia, seeing her allies deserting her, made one last desperate attempt. Fine. You want the truth? Yes, I married Harold for his money and this house. David approached me with the plan. Said we could both profit. He handles the business side. I play the devoted wife. We split the proceeds when the house sells. Are you happy now? She grabbed her purse and marched toward the stairs. I'm packing my things. This marriage was a sham anyway, a total waste of 2 years of my life catering to an old man. We watched in stunned silence as Patricia stomped upstairs, hurling insults and accusations all the way. The sound of drawers being yanked open and closet doors slamming echoed through the house. David stood alone now, abandoned by his co-conspirator, facing the collective judgment of the family he had tried to manipulate. This is all being blown out of proportion, he tried, his voice lacking conviction. I was only trying to secure Dad's future care. By stealing his home? By working with Patricia to drug him? I challenged. By hiding it all behind a birthday celebration? Walter stepped in, his voice low but firm. You've never respected what this house means to our family. Barbara wanted it to stay in the family to shelter Harold until the end of his days. You knew that, and you chose to ignore her wishes. Derek's expression hardened. Mom has been gone for years. Times change, priorities change. Sentimentality over an old house is financially irresponsible. Get out, Dad said, his voice stronger than I had heard in months. I don't want to see you right now, Derek. I need time to process this betrayal. David grabbed his ET. Fine, but this isn't over. That power of attorney is still valid until proven otherwise. We'll see about that, Michael responded. In the meantime, I've filed for an emergency protective order preventing any property transactions or additional financial withdrawals. You'll be served with the papers tomorrow. David stormed out without another word, slamming the front door behind him. Lauren remained, tears streaming down her face. Dad, Celeste, I'm so sorry. I had no idea what David was planning. He told me Celeste was overwhelmed caring for you, that a professional facility would be better for everyone. He manipulated you too, I said, surprised to find I didn't harbor anger toward my sister. He knew exactly what to say to make his plan sound reasonable. I should have questioned it more, she insisted. Should have visited more often, seen for myself what was happening. What matters is that you're here now, Dad said, embracing her, and that the truth came out before it was too late. Patricia reappeared with 2 large suitcases, her face a mask of fury. I'll send for the rest of my things. My lawyer will be in touch about a divorce settlement. I believe fraud and elder abuse will significantly impact any settlement discussions, Michael noted calmly, as will the pending criminal charges we'll be pursuing. Patricia froze. Criminal charges? You can't be serious. Medication tampering, financial exploitation of an elder, conspiracy to defraud, Michael enumerated. All felonies in this state. Dr. Kapoor's blood test results will provide the final evidence needed. Her face drained of color. Without another word, she dragged her suitcases out the door. The sound of her car starting and speeding away marked the end of her presence in our lives. In the sudden quiet that followed, Dad looked around at those who remained. Me, Lauren, Walter, Michael, Dr. Kapoor, and his old friends George and Martha. People who genuinely cared about his well-being, not what they could gain from him. I believe, he said with a weak smile, that I still have a birthday cake waiting to be properly enjoyed. Martha immediately went to the kitchen to retrieve the cake, and George poured fresh drinks. The birthday celebration resumed, transformed now into something more meaningful, a celebration of truth revealed, of manipulation thwarted, of family bonds damaged but not beyond repair. Always, Dad, I promised, feeling the weight of months of worry finally beginning to lift. Always. 3 months have passed since the birthday that nearly changed everything. The autumn leaves have given way to winter snow, transforming our neighborhood into a peaceful wonderland. Much has changed in our family, some painfully, some for the better. Dad has improved dramatically now that he's properly medicated. The artificial symptoms of dementia disappeared within weeks of Patricia's departure. His memory is sharper, his energy improved. Though at 70, he still has the natural limitations of age, we have established a routine of morning walks and evening chess games, activities that keep both his body and mind active. The legal aftermath was swift and decisive. The blood tests confirmed the presence of unprescribed sedatives and anti-anxiety medications in Dad's system. Combined with the video evidence and text messages, this was enough for the district attorney to file elder abuse charges against Patricia. She accepted a plea deal rather than face trial, resulting in probation, community service, and a restraining order preventing her from contacting Dad or coming near our home. The annulment of their marriage was granted on grounds of fraud, with the judge particularly disturbed by the evidence of deliberate cognitive impairment. Patricia left town shortly after, reportedly moving to Arizona to start fresh. Good riddance. Derek's situation has been more complicated and painful. The investigation revealed he had been siphoning money from Dad's accounts for over a year, using fabricated financial management fees. He faces charges of financial elder abuse and could potentially lose his professional licenses. More devastating than the legal consequences has been his estrangement from the family. Despite multiple attempts by Dad to reach out, David refuses all contact, blaming everyone but himself for the situation. Lauren, on the other hand, has become a regular presence in our lives. The shock of discovering Derek's manipulation seemed to awaken something in her. She and Justin now visit at least twice a month, sometimes bringing their children for weekend stays. She and I have rebuilt our relationship, finding common ground in our shared love for Dad and our commitment to his well-being. As for me, I've found a new balance. With Dad's improved health, I felt comfortable hiring Mrs. Rodriguez, a part-time caregiver who comes 3 days a week. This has allowed me to accept a remote marketing position with a startup company, keeping my skills fresh while remaining available to Dad. It's not the high-powered career I once had, but it feels right for this chapter of my life. Uncle Walter has been our rock throughout everything. After completing his cancer treatments, which thankfully were successful, he sold his Cleveland home and purchased a small house just 2 streets away from us. He comes for dinner several times a week, and his presence has been healing for Dad, who values his brother's company more than ever. The most meaningful change has been in my perspective on family and trust. I learned that sometimes those closest to us can cause the deepest wounds, whether through active malice like David and Patricia, or passive neglect like Lauren's initial distance. But I also discovered that broken bonds can be mended, that it is never too late to rebuild trust and connection. Dad and I finally took that trip to Lake Tahoe last month. We watched the sun rise over the water from the exact spot where he proposed to Mom 45 years ago. As the light painted the lake in shades of gold and pink, he told me stories I had never heard before, small details about their relationship that he had kept private until now. "Your mother would be proud of you, Celeste," he said as we sat bundled against the morning chill. "Not just for saving the house, but for how you did it. You were smart, prepared, and still kind, even when facing cruelty." That moment by the lake crystallized the most important lesson from our ordeal. Love requires vigilance. Not paranoid suspicion, but attentive care, a willingness to notice changes and ask difficult questions. If I had ignored the signs of Patricia's manipulation, if I had dismissed my concerns to avoid conflict, we would have lost everything that mattered. I also learned about forgiveness and its limits. I have forgiven Lauren, whose only real crime was trusting David too much and me too little. I am working on forgiveness for Derek, though reconciliation seems distant at best. As for Patricia, I can acknowledge her humanity without inviting her poison back into our lives. Some bridges, once burned, should remain crossed. The house remains our sanctuary, now filled with more joy than it has known in years. We've made some practical modifications, a bathroom safety rail here, better lighting there, but its essence remains unchanged. It's still the place where Mom taught me to bake, where Dad built us a tree house, where generations of love and memory reside in every corner. Sometimes late at night, I think about how close we came to losing it all, not just the physical structure, but the sense of security and continuity it represents. In those moments, I am grateful for the instincts that prompted me to question, to investigate, to prepare. That one phone call on Dad's birthday changed everything, setting in motion the events that saved our home and possibly Dad's life. If there is wisdom I can share from this experience, it is this. Trust your instincts when something feels wrong, especially with those you love. Document everything when suspicions arise. Build a network of support before you need it desperately. And remember that sometimes the most loving action is not the easiest one, not the one that avoids conflict, but the one that faces difficult truths head on. Dad and I sit on the porch swing most evenings now, watching the neighborhood children play, greeting neighbors, walking their dogs. Yesterday he turned to me with clear eyes and a peaceful smile. "You know," he said, "your mother always believed homes had souls, that they absorbed the love and pain of the families within them. If she was right, this old house must have one of the strongest souls around." I think he's right, and I'm grateful every day that we fought for this house, for its soul, for our family legacy. Have you ever had to stand up against family members to protect someone you love? What gave you the strength to make that difficult choice? Share your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that standing up for what is right is always worth it, even when it means standing against those who should be on your side. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, sometimes the family we choose to create is as important as the family we are born into.